Hi there, and welcome to the City of Whittlesea and our cat management proposals, a Q&A, live Q&A session. My name is Ben Duran. I'm the unit manager for the animal management team for the City of Whittlesea. I'm also here tonight with my manager, Debbie Blandford, for the manager of compliance and environmental health team, which the animal management team sit under. The City of Whittlesea recognises the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country and acknowledges the Wurundjeri Wurrung clan as the traditional owners of this place. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. Throughout this presentation and throughout the session, you can enter in any questions that you would like answered during the session. If you just go to menti.com and enter the code on the screen. We'll be accepting questions throughout the presentation and during our answering the questions later on in the evening. So the purpose of tonight's session is to obviously go through what the proposals are and looking for feedback and trying to assist you in answering any questions that you might have. So we are looking at introducing cat confinement laws. That's traditionally the cat curfew laws. And also the introduction of mandatory cat desexing for any newly registered cats that are not registered breeders. So just as an overview, within Victoria, there are 79 councils, local government councils within the state of Victoria. At this stage, 10 have a 24-hour cat curfew. That cats need to be confined to their property at all times. 27 have a sunset to sunrise or traditionally an overnight curfew. 17 are considering introducing a cat curfew. 25 do not have any plans to introduce a cat curfew. And 23 councils also have mandatory cat desexing. So the proposals are obviously for a 24-hour curfew, a dusk to dawn curfew, or a no curfew at all. So no changes to the current the rules that are in place for the City of Whittlesea. Just to reiterate that we've had a lot of questions about cats being locked inside. So confinement doesn't mean that your cats have to be indoors. Your cats can be outside, but they do need to be confined to your property. And if adopted, council will assist owners to transition their cats to be confined to their property. So the mandatory desexing proposal would require all cats being registered for the first time with the City of Whittlesea, and it does not include cats that are already registered. So if you do have a cat that is registered with council currently, once those rules come in place, as long as you maintain your registration, you don't need to get your cat desexed. That also doesn't apply to registered breeders. That's either through a domestic animal business with council or registered with a appropriate organisation. So we have been running our engagement sessions through social media, and an email distribution went out last week, I think it was, and it's gone through our Engage website. We also have we've had 11 pop-up sessions at the farmers market, our festivals, and some various small shopping centres throughout the municipality. And it's been quite successful in terms of trying to get people's engagement. I'll just go back to the Menti slide. So that's the end of our brief presentation. If you do have any further queries or questions to ask us as we go through the night, if you can go to menti.com and enter in the code 8913427. We will now flick over to Debbie, who can assist or start to answer some of the pre-submitted questions that we've had come through during the week. And then we'll be answering, obviously, further questions as they come through the night.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ben. And I just wanted to let everybody know I am working off two screens. I'm reading your questions off another screen. So if I'm looking away, please forgive me. So our first question tonight is, what are the timeframes for introducing any new laws? So there's quite a process that we need to go through, and this is really just the beginning of understanding what it is that our community expects from us. So we expect to take back all of the feedback that we've had as part of this engagement that we've been doing back up to our council later on in the year to make a decision about whether or not we do proceed with a potential curfew and mandatory cat desexing and what that might look like if we do. And then we realise that it's going to take some time, particularly in regards to any curfews that might be introduced, to help owners and their cats transition to that indoor or confined lifestyle. As Ben said, it doesn't mean it's necessarily always indoors. Cats can still go outdoors as long as they're contained to properties. So the idea would be that we would introduce a range of different education initiatives. There's some really great resources out in the community run by Melbourne Zoo and RSPCA, and also to do some DIY workshops so that people can build their own cat enclosures and cat runs. So if we did have a decision later on in the year, we would anticipate it would be another 6 or 12 months before the curfew laws came in, just to give people enough time to transition. Oh, that's probably a lot of information, but I'll give you, we'll go through to the next question. So the next question is around whether council will subsidise mandatory desexing for cats. So council already has some subsidised cat desexing programs in place both this financial year and next financial year. And currently we target pet owners who are experiencing disadvantage or financial hardship, and pension and healthcare card holders. So we already have something in place. Beyond next financial year, we don't have any plans as of yet. But it's a possibility that we might be able to continue to assist those that are experiencing some financial hardship if we have the budget available. Ben, I might hand you to the next question to you. The question is, what will happen to the large numbers of stray cats if a curfew is introduced?
Yeah, no problems, thank you. So cat curfews won't fix the problem of unowned cats or semi-stray cats, but together with the assistance of the community, we can start to address the large number of unowned cats in our community. So that might be working with the community members to assist them if they would like to take on the ownership of those cats. And again, we can possibly assist with the subsidised desexing for those cats, but getting those other cats off the street and potentially getting them into other homes through our partnership programs.
Thank you. Our next question, and Ben, I'll hand to you again. Is there a plan for responsible pet ownership?
Yes, there is. We've got, as part of our DAMP, we've got a lot of engagement with responsible pet ownership. In terms of, I've sort of touched on it in the previous one, if people do want to take on the responsibility for these unowned cats and take on to be a responsible pet owner, then the council will be willing to assist those people to do that. So these might be people who are feeding stray cats that are, they say that they don't own those cats, but they are providing the food for them. So we would promote people to take on the responsibility, take on any, because we are concerned about the welfare of these cats, about if they do get sick, who takes on the responsibility for any vet treatment. So council would be willing to assist with subsidised desexing for these type of cats if people are willing to take on the ownership. And we do have ongoing, like I said, we do have the ongoing plans about promoting responsible pet ownership and the benefits of keeping cats safe and the benefits of having them desexed. And like we said, having them properly cared for. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Ben. The next question is, if a cat curfew is enacted, will it be grandfathered? The new law should apply to new cats to the municipality only, and changing the habits of existing cats is unreasonable. I did touch on this a little bit before. So if a cat curfew was to be introduced, then it wouldn't be grandfathered. It would apply to all cats in the municipality. I guess the other important thing to note is that if mandatory desexing laws were brought in, that would be grandfathered. So that would only be for newly registered cats within the municipality. And we do understand that it will be quite a transition for cats and their owners if we were to introduce a curfew, and that's why we'd have that long lead in time and lots of support and information out there for our community. I'll move to the next question. The next question is, who is driving these changes and why is this a sudden issue or a sudden priority? So this actually came from some community consultation that we did throughout last year for our domestic animal management plan, which is a 4-year plan that all councils in Victoria must develop, and it basically outlines how we will manage cats and dogs in the city of Whittlesea for the next 4 years. And that plan's available on our website, and I encourage you to take a look at that. It's much broader regarding cats and dogs. So the changes were really driven by the feedback that we received during that consultation for the plan. And we've also had an increase in the number of nuisance complaints that we're getting from our residents across the municipality about cats trespassing onto their properties. And of course, we still have quite a large number of cats that are being impounded at the Epping Animal Welfare Facility. So combining desexing and curfews, if they were to go ahead, is really around trying to reduce the population of cats that we have in our municipality, but also trying to make sure that cats are safe and they're not causing a nuisance to people living within our municipality either. So there's a few reasons there, and that's why we're considering that at the moment. The next question is, if cat confinement is passed, will harnesses or leashes, walking cats on harnesses or leashes, be permitted? And in short, yes, the answer is it would be permitted, because essentially cat owners would still have their cats under effective control, similar to what the laws are in place for dogs when dogs are out of their property and need to be on leash when they're not in those off leash areas. So yes, the short answer to that one is yes. I'll move to the next question. Will there be any resources to educate or assist people to construct cat runs? And I might hand that one over to you, Ben.
Yes, sorry. There are, yeah, we've touched on it earlier. There are several resources available to help cat owners transition their cats to being confined to the property. We talked about the program Safe Cats, Safe Wildlife, which is a resource run by the Melbourne Zoo and RSPCA. And they run different, we will also be looking at running different programs to help with transition, including running DIY workshops to help build cat enclosures. Yeah, we'll be working with different groups to possibly provide some YouTube videos to go through the building of such enclosures, looking at different ways about confinement to the property.
Thank you. And the next one I'll also throw to you. If cat confinement is passed, will mandatory desexing also be passed, or is it either or?
So cat curfews and mandatory cat desexing are two different options being considered, and they'll both be considered as separate proposals. So it could be it could be none, it could be one, or it could be both. So yeah, definitely open to both options. Thanks, Debbie.
Great, thank you, Ben. The next question is, what are the current restrictions for cat owners? So is there a night curfew, and what are the penalties for non-compliance? So council currently doesn't have any curfews in place in the city of Whittlesea, which makes it really difficult for us to help the community when we have some issues with trespassing cats. So at the moment, it's quite a long and convoluted process. It means that it often creates a lot of frustration for our customers. And then the infringement at the end of it, if we can gather, I suppose, enough evidence, is $182, and that cycle continues to go. So that's the penalties, but it does take quite a while to get to that point. Under a curfew model, it would be much simpler to prove where there's been a breach of the the law, which would mean that we would hopefully be able to get an outcome sooner. And that's not just around enforcement and penalties, it's really around educating cat owners to keep their cats on their property rather than going straight for that enforcement element. So that's, I guess, another reason why we're considering the curfew, is really just to address some of those nuisance issues a bit more swiftly. I think I've sort of answered this one, but I'll read the question out anyway. So with current regulations, can owners be penalised if their cat trespasses on a neighbour's property in a non-curfew period? So I'm not sure if Ben, if you've got anything to add, but like I've just mentioned, there is still ways where council can enforce cats being not wandering onto other people's properties, even outside of that curfew period. So I've kind of touched on that, and I think we might just move on to the next question.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks, Ben. The next one is, I am happy with an overnight curfew for cats. My cat only goes out for an hour or two each day, mid-morning and early afternoon. Are you proposing no outside time? And I'll hand that one over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Debbie. So curfews do not mean your cat cannot go outside. It just means that it needs to be confined to your property. So in this situation, if your cat is going outside and it's remaining on your property, then wouldn't be any offence occurring on that occasion. So it must be contained to your property, and if your cat does wander, then obviously we need to look at ways of trying to confine it to your property. And like Debbie mentioned before, it's, if your cat is caught outside by a neighbour, then obviously it is causing an issue for your neighbour, and we would talk to you and try to educate you about how to then make sure that the cat is confined to your own property. But it can be outside, not just stuck inside the house. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Ben. And I'll hand the next one to you as well. Can the desexing be done by a vet of our choice?
Yes, good question. So if mandatory desexing is adopted by council, then it will be up to the owners to desex at their vet of choice prior to applying to register their animal. As we've mentioned before, we are looking at, we do have a current program in place for low-income households or low-income people who have got animals, and we can assist you in getting those animals desexed prior to registration. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the proposed time for the cat curfew? And I think Ben did touch on this in his presentation. So there's essentially three options that we're considering at the moment. One is a 24-hour cat curfew. One is an overnight curfew, which most councils have as a sunset to sunrise curfew. And the other is no curfew at all. So they're the three options that we're considering at the moment. Just waiting for the next question to pop up. The next question is there any possibility of council subsidising GPS cat collars? I guess the short answer to that is no, we haven't considered that, and that isn't actually part of our budget planning at the moment. So no, we wouldn't be considering that at this point in time. Sorry, my questions are a little bit slow. Here we are. If new rules are approved, how long will this take to be implemented? And Ben, if you don't mind, I'll take this one as well, just because we did touch on it a little before. So as I mentioned, we'll probably have a decision sort of in the later half of this year. So maybe August, September. And then after that, we will have a transition period, which will include all of the things that Ben's been talking about in terms of having DIY workshops and YouTube videos and using resources that already exist out there, such as the Safe Cats, Safe Wildlife program. So probably by, say, early to mid next year is when we'd expect any curfew laws to be implemented after that transition period, if we were to go ahead with a curfew. The next question. So if there's a problem with containment of neighbours' cats, will residents need to keep a diary similar to what currently applies to barking dogs, which sometimes doesn't amount in a result? Quick action is needed. So can I hand that one to you, Ben?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Debbie. So if the proposals are introduced by council, sorry, I'm on the wrong. Sorry, in terms of a nuisance complaint, if residents do continue to have problems with neighbouring cats, then we would encourage them to contact council. We would get residents to request a cat trap, and then those traps will be placed on the resident's property to contain any cats that are coming onto your property. We would then pick up any of those cats that have come through. We would identify the owners of those cats and potentially return them to them. And then the education piece comes in, where we educate the owners about confinement. And obviously there will be possibly some enforcement, but it depends on the case-by-case scenario. So if a cat is proven to be off its property and it does continue, then we're looking at fines of around about $182 at this stage. And then we've got the options to take matters further if we deem it appropriate. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Ben. The next question is, how will a cat curfew be monitored, and what happens with cat owners who don't comply with the new laws if they are put into action, and what will the consequence be? So the effectiveness of a cat curfew really does depend on a partnership between council and the community. So what we would need really in practical terms is we have cat trap programs, and we currently have a cat trap hire program at the moment, which is free of charge to our residents. We would need residents to set up cat traps on their property and essentially trap the cat that continues to trespass on the property, which then enables us to identify the cat either via microchip or registration details, assuming that we have those details. And then we can educate the cat owner, or if it's, there's multiple offences, we can take enforcement action, those fines that Ben was talking about. If there is continual non-compliance with those laws, we do have the option to prosecute as well, although we wouldn't foresee that happening very often. So at the moment, like I said, we can still do that, but it's just a much more difficult, lengthier process to get to that point. So that's essentially what the consequences are. It would be education, infringements, and then if it was continued, then ultimately we would likely need to prosecute to make sure that we're getting compliance. But of course, that's an absolute last resort. So the next question, has the council engaged in any research into the impacts of cat behaviour of confinement? I agree with the proposal and have had a cat that is confined 24 hours in the house, but I've always had some guilt. I should have said at the start, Ben and I are actually both cat owners as well, so we understand, we can understand the emotional connection that we have to our little kittens. So yes, in short, we have done some engagement. There's some programs going on in New South Wales that are being run by the RSPCA up there, and I mentioned before there's the Safe Cats, Safe Wildlife program that's being run by Melbourne Zoo in partnership with RSPCA Victoria. So there is quite a lot of research out there, and lots of ideas around how to enrich cats that are indoors only and make sure that they are happy and healthy and cared for. So yes, we have done that, and there is, like I said, plenty of information out there. You can all access the Safe Cats, Safe Wildlife information just by Googling it, and we will also be sharing any information if we were to go down the curfew line. Moving to the next question. So if a cat owner has shown compliance, so for example, if the cat's desexed, registered, contained, but the cat accidentally escapes, will there be an allowance for, say, a one-off offence, such as no fine? Ben, did you want to answer that one?
No problem. Thanks, Debbie. In most instances, it'll be a case-by-case scenario in every instance. And I think if it's a one-off that, like this person said, that their cat is registered, they've done all the right things, it's desexed, they've never had any issues before, then most likely the most likely course of action would be education about this. And then if we get a continued repeat behaviour, we may look at fines after that. I think we do have to have a common sense approach to this as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. The next question is, how do you propose to help cat owners transition to confining cats? I'll go back to a lot of the things that we've already spoken to. So it is a lot of that safe cats, safe wildlife, a lot of education, enrichment ideas to make sure that your cats, you know, are still happy and healthy, even if they are transitioning to a lifestyle where they are contained to the owner's property. We'll also be engaging some local community groups and the like to help us to run some DIY workshops. So some information around building cat enclosures or how to contain cats in the backyard. It doesn't have to be a great big enclosure. There are plenty of ways to contain a cat to a property. So all of that sort of information will be shared with our registered cat owners, but also with the broader community as well, just to help with that transition. The next question is, why would you not have mandatory desexing for all cats and not just newly registered cats? It's a really good question. And what we actually find is we've got about 7,000, just under 7,000 cats registered in the city of Whittlesea. And of those cats, 96% of those are already desexed. So it's a really great number of people that are registering their cats, doing the right thing and also desexing their cats. Some of that remaining 4% may have some exemptions, so they might be part of a cat association, they might be a registered breeder or the like. And what we've found is that it would be, and most councils do this when they introduce mandatory desexing, is that it's like not applying the law retrospectively. So I guess if you think about it from a a traffic point of view, if the speed limit changes, you wouldn't necessarily be applying that retrospectively, but the same sort of principle applies to this. We'd be applying it from whenever that law came in. That's probably not a great analogy, but I hope it just helps to kind of understand where we're coming from. The next question is, are you introducing TRN? I imagine that might mean trap, neuter, release, I'm going to guess. And the short answer to that is no, because it's not legal to do so in Victoria. So no, we won't be introducing that. Sorry, same question again. So no, we wouldn't be doing a trap, neuter, release. What is the problem that you're trying to solve, and why are we even thinking of this? Ben, can I throw to you?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Debbie. So the problem is the nuisance complaints that we do receive from the residents, and they do identify that quite often there'll be either numerous amounts of cats coming from a particular property, or they have issues with a particular cat coming from a property. It's look, these people might not like cats, they might be allergic to cats, etc. So it's trying to sort of reduce those nuisance complaints that we do receive. I think we mentioned it before about the semi-owned or the community cats that are out in the community. That it's not going to solve those sort of problems, and it's that's a bigger program that we need to run within council, is to how to tackle that problem and try to work with the community about that. So it's really responding to those nuisance complaints and having a better tool for us to use when we do action these sort of nuisance complaints.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
The next question is, where can residents find information about current desexing programs? I'm unable to find any information about this on the website. So I assume that means the current subsidised desexing program that council is currently running. There isn't a lot of information on our website at the moment, just because we are currently targeting areas where we know that there are significant cat problems. So like Ben was saying, we know that there are sort of semi-owned cats where people might be feeding them but not caring for them. And so we're really trying to encourage those semi-owned cats and the people that are feeding them to take up the offer of desexing, to stop the overpopulation issue that we're seeing in those areas. And of course, also making sure that we're targeting some of those lower income areas and people who might have pension cards or health cards or other sort of financial hardship going on. So making sure that people can access desexing to be responsible pet owners, even if they might not necessarily have the financial means to do so. So, but good point, and we might be able to pop something up on our website, particularly to direct people to that when they've got questions. So thank you for that. Your wording before just indicated a foregone conclusion. Is this a discussion or just a formality? I can absolutely hand on heart say that this is a proper discussion, and that's why we've gone through, there's 11 pop-ups like Ben said. We're here tonight. We've had quite a few responses on our Engage website, and it's really important to note that this is all an if. So they're the three options for the curfew that I touched on before, and it's also an if regarding the mandatory cat desexing. So these are all if they were to go ahead. So absolutely not just a formality. The next question. So I know many people who are feeding stray cats and they would like something done for them, but they're not willing to take ownership of them. What are the options? Ben, did you want to answer that one?
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, we know that this is quite a big issue in the community. So we do need people to take on the responsibility of these cats. We do sort of consider that if you are feeding a stray cat, that you are taking on the responsibility of that cat. We are concerned about the welfare of these cats. For instance, if they were to develop any diseases out in when you've got a large group of cats, there quite often can be diseases and stuff spread through cats. So we need people to take on the responsibility and look after the welfare of these cats. So if there are any particular issues, we would obviously ask people to get in contact with council and reach out to us, and we will assist those people and by providing subsidies for desexing or otherwise. And yeah, we want to just sort of get to the root of the problem and get these cats off the street and actually be cared for by somebody. Thanks, Debbie.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. The next question is, why weren't current cat owners with registered cats contacted by council as part of the community consultation process last year? So I imagine that means in relation to our domestic animal management plan, because this is the first consultation that we've done on the two proposals that we're presenting on tonight. We did actually send an email out to all registered pet owners, both dogs and cats, in the city of Whittlesea to participate in the domestic animal management plan engagement. And we also did a lot of those pop-ups that we were talking about before and some online surveys. So if you didn't get an email to invite you to participate, please make sure that you just update or check that your email address with council is the right one, and we'll make sure that our records are updated so that we can make sure you're included in the future. The next question is, as a cat owner in Whittlesea, I was under the assumption that there was already a cat curfew in Whittlesea. Nope, there's not at the moment. It's obviously, we always encourage people to contain their cats to their property for their cat's own safety and of course the welfare of local wildlife as well, but we don't have a curfew in place at the moment. Sorry, it's coming through. So it sounds like council has already decided on a 24-hour curfew. How will the curfew time be decided if a curfew is going to be introduced? That's really based on this engagement that we're doing with the community. So we are receiving feedback, and we've had, as I mentioned, quite a few submissions in relation to both of the proposals that we're presenting on tonight. We're also speaking with various interest groups and experts in the field, so people like Wildlife Victoria and vet clinics and local friends of groups who take care of some of our environmental assets. So really just getting that well-rounded view from both pet owners and some of the experts in the animal management industry. We weigh all of that up. We actually will just present the final data to our council, and council will take all of that into consideration when making a decision about how to move forward. How likely is it that the measures discussed will become a reality? I guess that's a follow-on from the last question. It will really depend on what the community is telling us and also the feedback that we're getting from those experts, and then it will be up to council to vote on whether or not we proceed or don't proceed, and if we do proceed, then what option would we proceed with in terms of the 24-hour or the sunset to sunrise curfew. Residents have been told that if they can trap cats, council will take care of them. Most people have no idea how to trap a cat. What resources are available for trapping cats? I'll hand that one over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Debbie. So we, like mentioned before, we do have a cat trapping program that is free of charge for all residents within the city of Whittlesea. So you can apply through our website or contact council, and we'll send you out an application form for the cat trap. We deliver the cat traps to the residents, and then any cats that are caught in that trap, and we'll show you how to use the trap as well. And any cats that are caught or contained in that trap, it's a humane trap, so it doesn't hurt the cats. The cats do might get a little bit freaked out, but they generally settle down. Once they're caught, council officers will come and transfer those cats to the Epping Animal Welfare Facility, which is, and then they'll be looked at. They'll be assessed for rehousing through our program. Yeah, if it's if you've got a particular problem with a lot of cats in your area, we generally will leave the trap there for a couple of weeks for you to try to get the problem under control. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Ben. The next question is, if cat confinement is adopted, will financial assistance be provided to residents to implement enclosures, etc.? So no, not at this point in time. Our support will be more around that education and some of the ideas that might be out there in terms of how to confine cats. So not at this point in time. We try to keep our cat in at night, but he occasionally escapes. It's unfair to penalise people for genuine escapes. How will this be managed? And I think, Ben, you touched on this before. It is really a bit of a case-by-case basis, and the whole idea of transitioning, if we were to go down this path, is really around educating people. We know that mistakes happen. We know that that pets sometimes do get out, even if we have the most responsible owners. So it really is a case-by-case basis, and it might just be a discussion with our animal management officers to explain the circumstances. So yeah, we'll take that on a case-by-case basis. Sorry, just moving through to the next question. Are you prepared to reduce the registration fee for owners who have more than 2 cats but have an outside run and cats are confined to the property? I might start trying to answer this, Ben, and if I get it wrong, you might you might jump in and help me. So the way that all councils in Victoria set registration fees is legislated under the Domestic Animals Act, which is a state government act. So councils can set whatever registration fees they like, but the reduced fee, which is, for example, desexed animals or animals older than 10 years old, and the like, animals that might be part of a Dogs Victoria or some sort of feline association, are eligible for that reduced rate. And then the standard rate, or the full rate, which is for undesexed animals, dogs that might have been declared dangerous or menacing or the like, they have to be at least 3 times that reduced rate. So I guess desexing is a really, there's a lot of financial incentive in terms of getting 1/3 of the registration fee of animals that are not desexed. So we wouldn't be able to necessarily consider a special fee for other cats just because it is legislated under that Domestic Animals Act. So I'm sorry, that is a little bit of a long-winded answer, but it is, yeah, it's quite heavily legislated. How will this be decided? A council vote or a resident vote? It will be a council vote, but that council vote will be taking into consideration all of this engagement that we're doing now, which is essentially giving us a bit of a temperature check in the community about how residents would vote on both of these proposals. So any decisions that we'd make would be based off the feedback that we're getting from our residents at the moment. I don't understand how mandatory desexing of only newly registered cats would help with the problem when there are currently so many cat owners who don't desex their cats now. As I mentioned before, 96% of our registered cats are desexed. So where people are doing the right thing, they will usually do the right thing and have their animals registered, desexed, confined and the like. As Ben mentioned, it's really around targeting people that might be feeding cats but maybe not taking full ownership or full responsibility for those cats. And that does take time. We've seen some neighbouring councils introduce some really great programs in that regard, but it doesn't happen overnight. It does take a little bit of time. Effectively, you've just said that the only options being considered are 0 cat curfew or a 24-hour curfew. You're saying that a cat has to stay on your own property now when outdoors, and the current fine is $182. So there's actually that third option that we mentioned as well. So it's no curfew, 24-hour curfew, or an overnight curfew, or a sunset to sunrise curfew. And cats should stay on the owner's property currently when they're outdoors, but under a curfew, that would mean that it would be a local law in the city of Whittlesea to do that. And you're right, the penalty would be $182. I'll move on to the next question. I think the dusk to dawn curfew and mandatory desexing would be the first stage, and then review post 12 to 24 months. It's extreme to confine when most owners are very responsible. And certainly that's absolutely an option. If we were to go down the path of a curfew, it might be that we decide to trial it and see how it works. So thank you for that idea. Sorry, that one hasn't come up properly. Here we go. I worry that if I trap a stray cat, will the cat be put down by council, or will there be rescue groups who would foster and socialise the cats? Can I hand that one over to you, please, Ben?
Yes, thanks, Debbie. So we do currently work with the RSPCA, so all animals are taken to the Epping Animal Welfare Facility. So we do whatever possible to ensure that the cats are not put down. They are always assessed for, suitability for rehousing. They are usually given a time period. If they do show behavioural issues, they are given a time period to, so that we're not making a judgment call on those cats. So we definitely don't put down any cats that we deem are, an own cat, are showing own behaviours. There are potentially some occasions where some, cats with behavioural issues do get put down, but it's only in extreme cases. So we try whatever resources we can, and we will be working with also rescue groups to rehome some of those cats that are showing behavioural issues that we think can be improved. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Ben. The next question is specifically, how much is the financial assistance for desexing, and how much does it cost to desex a female cat in the municipality? And I'll hand that one to you as well, please, Ben.
No problems. Thanks, Debbie. So our current program that we're running, with, like we said, if you do have a pension card or a healthcare card holder, it is currently free to have your cat microchipped, desexed, and council registered. And we are also providing a transport service for those cats. If you don't hold a pension or a healthcare card, then the cost will be $50. So if you did want to register any interest, I'd encourage you to either contact council, or you can send an email to, I think there's an email address up on the Engage page. It's animal.management@whittlesea.vic.gov.au, just with some details, and we'll get in touch with you about how the program runs and grab some further details from you. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the evidence that mandatory desexing legislation is effective, and what are the effects that you're hoping for? So as we mentioned earlier, there are a few case studies out there where mandatory desexing has been shown to reduce the overpopulation of cats. So the number of cats that we're finding out in the municipality that, unwanted litters, or those that are semi-owned by people. Banyule City Council next door to us is actually a really good case study in terms of what they've done over the last decade or so to make a dent in that, and their impound numbers for cats have dropped right down to 10% of what they used to be. So that's a really great case study. And RSPCA in various states, so such as New South Wales, and also looking at the Safe Cats, Safe Wildlife, although that's a much newer program, also have some evidence there that desexing really does help in terms of the welfare of the cats, making sure we don't have unwanted litters, and making sure that we don't have too many, or reducing the number of those semi-owned cats that are living out on the streets. Same question, but regarding cat containment legislation. So what's the evidence that cat containment legislation is effective? It's much the same. So it's really around making sure that fewer cats are out in the community and being impounded. It's a reduction in the number of complaints that council receives. And it's also around cat welfare and making sure that, you know, there's cats that are not being involved in traffic accidents or cat fights and the like. So I'm not sure if there's a specific study on that, but certainly speaking with others who've introduced something similar, that's their experience. I don't have the physical or financial capacity to construct a cat run, so how would I comply with this proposed legislation? It's not actually a requirement to have a cat run under this proposed curfew. There's other ways that people can contain cats to their yard, which are much simpler, much more cost effective, don't require any sort of physical, too much physical exertion. So all of those sort of ideas will be definitely shared if we were to go down that path, just because we understand that not everybody has the financial capacity to construct sort of really large cat runs. How many nuisance complaints do you receive, and are they from a small number of individuals? I don't have the data on me. I'm not sure if you can remember off the top of your head, Ben, how many we received in the last year, but it's not just from a small number of individuals. It's actually quite widespread from across the municipality. If you don't have that data on you, Ben, that's okay. We can maybe circle back.
I think from the 1st of July through till the end of March, we received, I think it was 627 complaints about cats, and that is throughout the municipality. There are sort of problem areas where we have those semi-owned cats, but then we do receive a lot of complaints about neighbouring cats, you know, through sort of Doreen, Waller, Epping. It is very, very spread across the municipality.
Thanks, Ben. The next question is, have you looked at how successful other councils have been with dusk to dawn curfews? Yes, we have, and it's a bit of a mixed bag. So some of the councils that have got dusk till dawn curfews are now considering potentially introducing 24-hour curfews. Other councils are quite happy with the dusk till dawn curfews and are finding it quite effective in their municipalities, given that cats are quite nocturnal by nature. So it's a bit of a mixed bag out in the local government sector. So sorry, I think we've answered this question. I might just skip to the next one. Sorry, some of these are just coming through, we've already touched on. So will cats be allowed outside our property during the curfew if they're on a leash, so i.e. on a walk? And whoever submitted the question has said apologies if it's already been asked. The short answer to that is yes, that will still be allowed. Hello and thank you for your time. Given the answer to why a curfew, could you please clarify if this is purely because of individual nuisance concerns? No, that is one of the reasons why we're considering it, but this is really being driven by cat welfare and making sure that the cats that do live in our municipality are safe, as well as the wildlife that lives in our municipality. We've got quite a lot of wildlife in the city of Whittlesea. We're really lucky, and it's really around making sure that we're trying to limit the spread of disease amongst cats getting injured or being hit by cars, and of course that wildlife element. So the nuisance complaint is one element, but it's much broader than that. The next question, page 19 in the domestic animal management plan states that semi-owned cats are significant contributors to overpopulation. How will either of these legislative proposals impact on this cohort? So as Ben touched upon earlier, we are targeting some of those semi-owned cat areas that we're aware of and offering that subsidised desexing to those owners. I guess the one that's really important there is the mandatory cat desexing, and considering that, because obviously if cats are desexed, particularly if we're getting people to take ownership of those semi-owned cats, that will then impact on the overpopulation that we're currently experiencing. Can you explain the difference between the proposed containment options? If cats must currently be contained on the owner's property, what's the change? Did you want to touch on that one, Ben?
Yes, thanks, Debbie. So the current, given that we don't have any current restrictions on cats, they are allowed to go outside of your property. If they do trespass on somebody else's property, they do have the right to obviously contain that cat and then contact council. it is a bit of a drawn out process in terms of if we were to go down of any enforcement action for nuisance cats and repeated behaviour. We would have to issue a notice of objection against trespass once the cat has been sighted on the property more than once. So it has to be the second or third time. And then enforcement action can then take place after that notice of objection is sent to the cat owner. So it's just that long drawn out process. So we can start to have that education conversation with the owner straight away if any curfews are introduced. Yeah, like I said, it's just that long drawn out process currently. So I think we can speed up that process if a curfew is introduced. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Ben. The next question is, will rescue groups be involved in taking cats or kittens if no one wants to take responsibility for unregistered cats? And the short answer is yes. So Council will be taking the operation of the Epping Animal Welfare Facility over from October this year. And as part of that, we're establishing relationships with various rescue groups to help us to rehome cats that aren't reclaimed from the facility. So the answer to that one is yes. What is the difference in impact on local wildlife with a 24-hour curfew versus a night curfew? And that's a really good question. We're finding that out in other local government areas that have a dusk till dawn curfew. That's why they're considering potentially introducing that 24-hour curfew, just to make sure that wildlife is protected around the clock. But there are obviously options that we're considering at the moment. So probably not a lot of difference, apart from the fact that some of those, both cats and wildlife, are often quite nocturnal in nature. The next question is, if 96% of cat owners in the city of Whittlesea are desexing their cats and doing the right thing, why should we be punished with cat confinement? They're two very different things. It's really great that people are desexing their cats, and I'm really glad that they are, because it really does contribute to making sure that the overpopulation of cats doesn't increase compared to what we've already got. But confinement is a different matter, and like I've said, there's a few different reasons why we're considering the confinement, which is really around the cat welfare, but also around the nuisance issue. So just because a cat's desexed doesn't mean that it might not be injured, it might not hurt wildlife, or it might not cause a nuisance to others in the community. So they're two separate matters. The next question is, are council considering reduced fees for cat owners who've already keep their cats enclosed on their property and are desexed, or would it be considered as an incentive for responsible pet ownership? So as I mentioned before, there are already registration fee incentives for people who desex their cats, which is legislated under the Domestic Animals Act. So that's a third of the price that you'd pay if your cat wasn't desexed. Any other factors we're not really able to consider, just because it is in the legislation. So there wouldn't be any further discounts apart from what we already offer. This is not a question, but more of a statement. Having a cat curfew makes your vet bills cheaper, as they are less likely to injure themselves, and they are also less likely to pick up parasites and illnesses. Yes, two very good reasons why we're considering the proposals that are before you this evening. The next question is, what's the penalty for people who trap cats but don't call council to have them collected? Our cat was trapped and held for 36 hours, with the trapper denying he had her until hounded to see his trap. So when we issue our cat traps, it comes with a very specific set of instructions for how people need to set them up to make sure that the welfare of the cat that's trapped is obviously paramount. So things like having water available, calling council as soon as you notice that the cat is trapped, or taking the cat straight to the Epping Animal Welfare Facility. When we are made aware of issues, and thankfully they don't happen very often, but when we are made aware of issues where the welfare of the cat that's trapped isn't being cared for in the way that we've instructed, then that becomes a welfare issue that we deal with, or depending on the severity, might be handed over to the RSPCA. But everybody is certainly instructed to hand over the cat to council as soon as they notice that it's trapped. Sorry, I'm just trying to read the next one. No, numbers impounded will increase. The Whittlesea Facebook page does a good job of reporting these cats, but sometimes the outcome is not clear, i.e. whether they're reunited, rehomed, or euthanized. Could this be given some priority? We can certainly look at how we might publicise some of those figures in the future. It would be very difficult to do that per Facebook post, just because we do get so many animals coming in through the facility, but can understand that certainly, yeah, people are interested to see what happens once that cat is in our pound. The next question is, have you considered implementing a Banyule Council style strategy? The answer is yes. We've been speaking with Banyule for quite some time, and they've had some really great success over in Banyule, and we're really keen to learn from their experiences. The question is, the problem is that people who are not desexing their pets often also don't bother registering their pets either. So how do council check whether animals are registered? And I'll hand that one over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Debbie. So there's various ways that we obviously do. We do currently do some door knocks around the suburbs. Of concern are probably those areas where there's semi-owned cats. If people do advise us that they do have cats, we will follow up with the registration of those cats. We also look at the microchip databases to get some figures about who has either adopted a cat or who has microchipped a cat. And then we follow up with those owners about registration. So yeah, we understand that there is a lot of cats out there that are unregistered, but we do proactively go out there and door knock and look for these especially in areas of concern for us. Yeah, thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Ben. I am noting we've only got 5 minutes left, so we will get through as many questions as we can, but we will be wrapping up at 7:30. So the next question is, given that we will not have elected councillors to decide on this proposal, what avenues besides these consultations do residents have to ensure their views are respected and considered? So the administrators that are in place at the moment who form our council play exactly the same role as elected councillors, and the engagement process that we're undertaking at the moment is exactly the same as if we had elected councillors. And the whole idea of this engagement process is to make sure that communities' views are represented, and our council are very, very conscious of that, and they really do want to hear from our community. So if you haven't yet done so, I really encourage you to put in a submission via the Engage Whittlesea page. Sorry, it's coming up. How much will either or both of these legislative initiatives cost to implement? So we don't have exact dollar figures in place, but what's being proposed will really be covered under our existing budget. So it's already included in our domestic animal management plan, and most of it will really just be the time of our animal management officers. So there's not a huge impost in terms of the cost to introduce either of these initiatives, apart from obviously the time of our animal management officers, and we've already got that subsidised desexing in place. The next question is, has consideration been given to the well-being of cats who socialise with neighbouring cats and would no longer be able to do this with cat confinement? No, that specific scenario hasn't come up, but at the same time, I suppose if you have neighbouring cats who interact on each other's property, and if that cat is there with permission, then you've got agreement with your neighbour, then that might still be able to occur. But in terms of roaming out in the street, if we were to go ahead with a curfew, that's what wouldn't be allowed. Again, statement rather than question, dogs aren't free to roam the streets or have a night curfew, so cat owners should be expected to keep their cats on their own property. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'll flick through to the next one. We've had that question already. So mandatory desexing of owned animals doesn't account for the impact of semi-owned, stray and feral animals in the pet overpopulation. Trapping and killing is not the answer. What is the council's solution? Do you want me to take this one, Ben? I guess there's a couple of points here. So feral animals are one bucket. Stray and semi-owned cats are really where we're trying to focus our efforts at the moment in terms of that the desexing, as we've said before. So trapping and killing is certainly not the answer, and where we can rehome or get owners to reclaim or properly adopt and own those semi-owned cats, that is certainly our preferred option. That is often not a possibility when we've got feral cats, but like Ben said, once cats are in our facility, they are given some time to assess their behaviour. Once the initial, I guess, shock of entering into a pound environment's worn off, we then assess what the animal's doing and how they're behaving. Sorry, I've got another repeat question that I'm just going to go through just because I'm really conscious of the time. Sorry. Sorry, I think we've actually come to the end of our questions. So sorry about that. Just wanted to double check that we'd gotten through. There will be some more information that's published up on our Engage Whittlesea website, so engage.whittlesea.vic.gov.au, and you can scroll down and find the CAT management proposals there. So there's already information up there, and we will be answering if there's any other questions. We can answer those on that platform. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us tonight and taking time out of your busy schedules. We really appreciate the time that you've put in, and thank you very much for your questions. And as I mentioned, if you haven't yet put in a submission, please do so via that Engage website that I mentioned earlier. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you.